Hey everybody, welcome to So Many Sequels, your book club for movies. We should have come up with like a spooky way to say it because
Oh, yeah.
it's
Okay.
so many scares now.
We
Oh, yes.
can.
We don't have to do it right now, but we should
Oh.
come up with one.
Okay.
Welcome to So Many Sequels.
Yes,
The
So many
book
scares.
club for movies.
All right, just making it worse. It's making it worse.
it is. It's making it worse. Yeah, it's one of our favorite times of year is already here. Doesn't make sense, but that's the calendar says it. I'm looking at it. It says it.
Mhm.
You can't argue with the
Mhm.
calendar. It's October.
As soon as
so
that O shows up,
I know.
Feels early.
It's my favorite time of the year, though. I love the burr months: September, October, November, December. Love the burrs. It's a good time of year. Holidays.
Because you were born in the summer.
Nice weather. I was born in the
Mhm.
summer.
And so that's why you like the winter. Mhm.
Oh, is that a thing? Do people like the opposite?
I was
of
born in
weather?
March. That's why I like summer so much.
Oh, is that so?
Garrett, you were born in like September or something.
August.
August.
I
I
have
don't
no
know what that
preference.
would
So I don't
mean.
know what-
That's like
All
in
the
middle
seasons
school.
are the same in Oklahoma. They don't feel it's hot
That's
or
true.
ice. There's no difference. I don't like
That's true.
hot and I don't like ice. I don't want them.
Right now, we're in that weird between period where you have to put your defroster on in the morning, and then you have to have your air conditioner on
I call it
blasting
costume.
in the afternoon.
I call it costume.
Shorts
change
and a
weather.
hoodie.
Yeah.
It's costume change weather for sure. And there'll be plenty of costume changes because Halloween's coming right up around the corner. Right up, you guys gonna do anything? You gonna dress up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
am gonna be.
Are you announcing your costumes yet? Or okay?
Well, I can. Yeah, I'm gonna be Jack from The Shining. I'm gonna have a board
from The
with
Shining.
eggs and everything. I'm gonna put my face through the thing. I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet, but Pinterest exists and so does TikTok. So.
You doing a couple's costume, group costume situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
She gonna be one of the creepy little girls?
No, she is gonna be Shelley Duvall beating me with a baseball bat.
Oh, nice. Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
I also have a group costume plan this year. Now the group theming is a little wonky because our son decided it, and so he is going to be a bat, and my wife is going to be a vampire. He decided I was going to be a pumpkin. Now, where the theme, there's a disconnect there for me with the theme, although it's just kind of vague Halloween. However, I convinced him to let me be a very certain kind of pumpkin.
As Mr. David Pumpkins?
Yes, I've convinced him to let me be David S. Pumpkins.
Now that's a good compromise.
I showed him the costume. I said, "Is this a pumpkin?" And he said, "Yeah. Can you wear that?" And I said, "Yes, I can."
And I will.
Well
and
done.
I will.
Well done.
So, I don't live with a 3-year-old, so I'm going to ask you what this might go like. What are the chances that, like, day before Halloween, his mind changes completely and now he hates bats? Because I know how tricky that can be. What if
it can be? He has been set on bats.
He's committed
since his birthday, basically. Like since February, he's been set on being a bat, and he has not wavered on that. I kept trying to push him towards other things, because I was like, "You want to be a bat? It's so boring. Why don't you want to be something more interesting?
Why not Batman?"
And yeah, Batman. I have all these Batman costumes, man. Come on. Don't you want to be Spider-Man? No, he just wants to be Bat. So. If he does make a last second change, I don't know what we're gonna do because you try to find a costume on the day of Halloween or the day before Halloween. Nah.
You gotta run into a Spirit Halloween and pay premium. That's what you gotta do then.
You do. You try finding a Where's Waldo costume the day of Halloween. It's not easy.
Oh man, it's worse than a Where's Waldo book. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I've thought about it a little bit, but I don't fully know yet. I have some ideas. I've tossed around Beetlejuice. It seems appropriate. He's timely again. Not that Beetlejuice is ever a bad Halloween costume, I think.
No.
So it's some ideas out there. Nice. We'll see what I do.
You got plenty of time. It's early.
I think you got the hair for Beetlejuice.
I got it cut the other day, so it's not as long, but I could make it go crazy, I think. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we're getting. It's hard to transition out of just the normal costume chit chat.
We will see. Hey, I'll tell you what. If we hit our subscriber goal of 316, maybe, or maybe we will. We might do one of the podcasts in costume.
I would commit to this. I'd commit to
Mm-hmm.
this.
We're only 4 away.
I
Be a
know,
good
and that's
bit.
the
So
danger. That's why I don't like. It's a trick or a treat. I don't know.
can we get 4 subscribers in 4 weeks?
That's the question.
We'll see.
That is the question. It's a tough one. Let's go ahead, get into our movie discussion of the week, though. We don't want to drag this out too long. We're talking about my pick. I'll explain my pick here in a little bit, but I decided to go with Final Destination. This is a movie that came out in 2000, March 17th, 2000. Um, it's described as after a teenager has a terrifying vision of himself and his friends dying in a plane crash, he prevents the accident only to have death hunt them down one by one. David, what was the box office response to Final Destination?
Well, Final Destination opened March 17th, 2000, like you said, in the number 3 spot, bringing in $10 million. It's about $18 million in 2024 money. It opened the same weekend as Aaron Brockovich, starring Julia Roberts. And that was a 28.1 million opening weekend for Aaron Brockovich. And the number 2 spot, you had Mission to Mars. I feel like this is a movie Andrew Nichols, a disgraced former host, loves. I could be wrong, but I would put $5 down that Andrew Nichols loves Mission to Mars. And I'll put so that was at number 2 with 11.3. Also at number 4 was My Dog Skip, bringing in 5.2, and at number 5, The Ninth Gate brought in 3.3 million in its second week.
My Dog Skip. I haven't thought about that movie in a very long time. That movie was sad.
I don't think many people have.
No.
Sad.
Oh man, it's a really sad movie. So anyway, Final Destination would hold on to that number 3 spot in its second weekend, only dropping 27%. This is a classic, good word of mouth for a horror movie situation where people saw it opening weekend and said, "Oh, you got to go see Final Destination, man, it's messed up." And then does pretty well in its second weekend as well. It would slowly drop out of the top 10 after nearly 2 months, dropping like roughly 20% each week. So a pretty steady run until it finished with $53 million in the US. That's about 97 million in 2024. It also did 59 million overseas for a worldwide total of 112 million on a $23 million budget. So all around a financially successful film. That $23 million budget, that's the equivalent of about a $40 million budget today. So I think that's about average for a sort of bigger studio horror. I don't know. We'd have to go and look at some of the more recent ones to compare and contrast. But anyway, that $53 million run in the US was good enough for the number 49 spot of the year 2000. Year 2000. Which we've talked about many times before. Very recently, the number 1 movie of the year was How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The number 2 movie was Castaway. Number 3, Mission Impossible 2. Number 4 was Gladiator. And number 5 was What Women Want. We have done 8 movies from the year 2000. And if you believe this or not, we've done 6 in the last 9 months. 6 of those 2000 movies we've done in the last 9 months.
I believe that.
Including Meet the Parents, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Reindeer Games, Return to Me, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So
I think it makes sense because I remember almost nothing from the year 2000. It's like a year wiped from my memory for some reason. Nothing of note I can recall from 2000. So maybe that's why we've just been drawn to it lately. I don't know.
Maybe, and there were a lot of solid films that came out that year, but many of them, just kind of think get swallowed up a little bit by the craze of 1999 and sort of the post 9/11 era of movies. So it's kind of a forgotten year for a lot of people.
There's more.
I was just going to say some other big horror movies that came out in the year 2000. What Lies Beneath was the highest grossing horror movie of that year, a movie starring Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. Scream 3 also came out in 2000. The Cell, Hollow Man, American Psycho, and I'll also throw in Scary Movie came out in the year 2000. So sorry, Josh.
No, you're fine. I want someone to do like some kind of like study on 2000 because I feel like it's a lost era because of exiting the 90s and the excitement of the new millennium and Y2K, and then the complete like cultural reset that happened with 9/11. I just feel like 2000 we never got to actually experience what the new millennium was supposed to be. And the movies of this year, maybe they are some kind of key to the past.
Well, and we've talked about it before. The number one movie of the year was How the Grinch Stole Christmas. How crazy for the most
True.
popular, essentially financially popular movie of the year to be a Christmas film. The like one of the last movies to release that year is kind of wild. And actually, number two is Castaway, which also opened December 22nd of that year. I feel like, to your point, Josh, I saw most of the films in the year from the year 2000 on home video or TV. Like like if I run through these movies, most of them I saw on home video. I don't remember seeing a single one of these in theaters. I'm sure I did, but I don't remember it.
Wow. Well, let's go ahead and get into Final Destination. I picked this movie because it has become such a iconic piece of pop culture history. The whole idea of the random death,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I've never gotten in a car with anybody and driven behind a trailer full of poles, like
Mm-hmm.
light poles or
Logs and
anything
stuff.
with logs, without that being
Yeah.
mentioned. Like for only making $59 million, it's like I would say it's made a more long lasting, powerful cultural impact than even something like Avatar made
Mm-hmm.
with the billions of dollars. Like the money is not always the winner. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's about what you do to the society of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like something that's always I've always thought about Final Destination. They've made a ton of them. I haven't watched it
Mm-hmm.
in a long time, so I was ready to look forward to or go back to it. But I felt like it took the slasher genre, which was so popular in the 90s, and turned it on its head by having the villain not be a serial killer, not be a monster, but being death itself, but still
Mm-hmm.
going through these slasher type deaths.
Yeah.
I wanted to go into that and explore that and talk about that. So that's why I picked it.
Nice. To contrast that, this is the first time that I had seen Final Destination because young Garrett did not like scary movies, nor would he entertain the idea of seeing one. And so this made that list. And so I never saw it or any of the ones that preceded it because it also looked a little campy. And it was. And that was not a problem. You know, it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable. I think it held up quite well as far as the idea. I really liked the idea there, Josh, that you mentioned that death is
Yeah.
the one that's doing it, and that you can't escape death, and that if you try, then you have to right its wrong. And I think there's a lot more to explore there. So much so that I thought, in a rare occasion, that this would be a fun one to reboot in an age of modern good horror. Give it like 30 extra minutes to explore the story of it all. This one
Mm-hmm.
fell into the trap of those horror movies of that time, focusing so much on the kill that the story
Mm-hmm.
got lost. And I think that there's a lot of story that could be found in addition to the fun kills. So I thought overall it was okay. Acting, production, some of it was very questionable and not great, but overall the idea really kept me entertained.
Yeah, and I'll agree. I'll tell you, Josh. Like I said, I think this is a movie that it has that bigger culture impact because of television. Again, like this was on, I don't know what channel, but this was on TV a lot. I feel like when I was younger, which is how I saw it. And I actually really liked it back then. This is one of the few times where I'll say like I watched this movie. It was a horror movie, but I watched it as a kid, and I was actually I liked the idea because it is an unseen force that takes these people. I love the idea for the movie. It can be very gruesome. Some of these deaths are very upsetting, especially the first one. The first one was very scary to me as a kid because he was so helpless, and we'll get into the specific deaths in a minute. It's phobia inducing. The whole series has a tendency to be that way, and it gets more outlandish as they go. But this first one feels some of the ways that these people die feel very plausible, with the exception of maybe one. They feel very plausible, very realistic, and very incidental. Um, I don't know that like you said, Garrett, it is a bit cheesy. There are some very hammy lines, and I can't wait to talk about some of them. But I think it manages dread fairly well at times. The sense of impending doom that is about to happen that the character doesn't. Um, but it has some creative ideas. I feel like this movie doesn't get the credit it deserves. I think for later movies that I feel like kind of have this trend of like unseen villains or antagonists. Movies, the recent movies like It Follows and Smile, kind of have that sort of vibe of like this problem that nobody else can see except for the person who can see it, and they just seem crazy. And are these things actually, like how are they happening and what does it look like? So, yeah, I think that while it's not like a movie that I would put in my top 100, top 50 all time, I think it's a decent horror movie.
Yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it for what it is. It's definitely campy. I
Mhm.
laughed at a lot of it, and don't even know if that's I don't even know if that's necessarily a bad thing. There's probably some
Mhm.
part like I put a note. There's a death that Miss Luton, the teacher, she like um trips and like a knife falls into her chest, and then her house
Mhm.
explodes, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I laughed because it was so crazy by that point. It's funny.
Mhm.
Um, But ultimately, I just love the idea of there not being a bad guy to follow. But they still
Mhm.
managed to go down this familiar path by having Alex be such a suspect the whole time because, of course, he is. He has all the visions. He's present everywhere a death occurs. So he has to spend the whole movie racing against death
Mhm.
to one, figure out what the hell's going on, two, stop his friends from dying and stop him,
Mhm.
prevent his own death.
Mhm.
That's just such a cool idea. And then just to top it all off, I feel like this movie sets the stage for Jigsaw later on because of this whole Rube Goldberg machine of death that happens in so many parts of Final Destination.
Mhm.
I feel like this is the type of movie that did just trigger a lot of people to be like, oh my God, did I unplug the hairdryer? If I didn't unplug the hairdryer, then it's still running and the towel will catch fire and then
Mhm.
everyone will die. That's
Mhm. Mhm.
it's just something that,
Checking. Yeah.
yeah, you just want to double check everything after watching the movie. I love what that does. It's very fun.
The one element that I did not like of this, and I'll just bring it up real quick because we can move past it, was the Alex being the suspect and the FBI agents. Man, they were bad.
Dumb.
They were
They were on
stupid.
his ass.
They did not know what they were doing. And listen, to connect this podcast back to last week's podcast, Daniel Roebuck played an integral part of Matlock, the original series. He was a private
Mhm.
investigator. I know this man knows how to do that job, and he did a bad job. That whole thing could have just, I feel
This
like
isn't how we did it in Matlock.
I understand that they had to be like investigated because they like they ran off a plane saying it was going to explode and then it exploded. So
Mhm.
you needed something there, but that part of the story just added nothing for me, and I was like, get away with it. They're not even good. Let me just just overlook that whole piece and let me focus on the kids and their handling of the
Hey,
situation, because that was where I was at.
again, I don't want to keep bringing up this terrible, tragic event that happened in human history, but this is all pre 9/11 too. So this is like nobody had thought about the FBI and how exactly stringent they would be if this situation happened. The director had a quote that's aged pretty terribly, where he said that they wanted this movie to do for airplanes what Jaws did for did for swimming, and I was like, boy, did he would he
What
did
a
not
thing to
know.
regret saying.
Yeah, I know, because years later about a year later there would be a big trend of people not wanting to fly on airplanes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, some of the characters I do I want to get into some of the deaths and then some of uh the the group, so some of the ways that they get to these murder these I hesitate to say murders. I mean, they're technically all accidents, right? It's death, like it's designed, right? But we actually get
It's like
during the
wrestling, it's
opening credit scenes.
predetermined.
Yep.
I noticed exactly. I noticed this for the first time watching it this time. We actually get a foreshadow of all of the deaths during the opening credit sequence. We're in Devon Siwa's room, right, and we see a skeleton that looks like it's been hung, right. We see a book open, and you see an image of a woman burning. We see a guillotine, right. We see a book. We see the book Death of a Salesman, which does Billy Loman does die in a car crash, which I wouldn't really compare to being hit by a bus, but that's the closest I can think of. And then, like, the last thing we see is a statue of Jim Morrison, who died in France. And so I feel like all of those seem to be foreshadowing the deaths that occurred during the film. After the plane explodes, there is also behind the character of Terry a big poster of a bus. which I found to be pretty crazy how they went really detailed with a lot of the foreshadowing for this movie. Some of the even obvious foreshadowing includes like the knife stained glass window that Mrs. Luton has, and the use of the John Denver song, Rocky Mountain High. So it's a movie where I think they really thought about it pretty hard. Let's continually put these things in your mind so that the next time you watch this movie, you go, "Oh man, this and that." Like I think they wanted this to be a multi-watch movie in that way.
Oh, see, you got a different eye than me. I didn't catch any of that, but I did
Mm.
spend a lot of time thinking about why I would never ask you guys to go poop with me at the airport. That's what threw me off at the beginning.
It was a different time.
It
We
was.
gotta go take a
It was
shit.
pre 9/11, you know.
Wow. Wow. How
That
many
was so
different
messed
takes
up.
can we have? I mean, wow.
That was so many messed up that they that there's. I mean, especially too. Why show us that? Why is that a scene in the movie needed?
I
Don't show us
just
two guys
love
pooping together.
well, the fact that we went there is amazing, but I just love it's a level of overthinking I could never get to, and I hope I wouldn't, but just this explanation of we can't poop on the plane
Hmm.
because the pretty girls might think it's our poop. And if
Hmm.
they smell our poop, they won't
Yeah.
think we're pretty boys.
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
basically what it is.
It is.
Somebody in the writing room was high and had that conversation, and the other person went, "Man, we got to put that in the movie, man." And they went, "Yeah, let's do it." And so they did.
Yeah.
That's what
You
happened.
know, I was in reading up about the movie. The writer initially envisioned this as all being adults, and because of the popularity of Scream, the studio was like, no, it's got to be teens, it's got to be high schoolers, and so then you have to write in all this like teen angst of like, well, the girls, man, what if they think we're uncool, you know? And those girls didn't want to be with those guys at all. I don't even know why they even bothered.
I totally forgot that another one of the reasons I picked this was in the early production phase. This was written as a spec script for an episode of The X Files. So
Mm-hmm.
it was expanded upon a much smaller idea. I would love to see
Mm-hmm.
what just the episode would have entailed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But once
Because you
New
think,
Line got a hold of
yeah.
it, they were like, "Let's develop this a little more." So they brought in James Wong to direct, and he's an X-Files writer, and then they also
Mm.
brought in another X-Files writer. So this is like got X-Files all over it.
Yeah, you would assume that if an episode had been made, the FBI agents would probably be the central characters.
And it'd be Mulder and Scully, right?
Yeah,
And they wouldn't be
and
that
so
dumb.
no, they'd probably be like, "What? How is this kid doing this?" Because it. But I mean, honestly, you look at the situation, the chain of events. It's like, yeah, you kind of look pretty guilty here.
Right.
Whatever his name is, Will Browning. I
Alex.
don't know his name.
Alex Browning. But see, that's
Alex
where I
Alex
Browning.
think they
Browning.
I
There
think they
you go.
should have just focused on the kids trying to handle the situation. Like you can have your
Mm.
inner turmoil, but like you Scooby do that. You just keep it in the inner world. I get that the plane blew up, but like you leave
Mhm.
the reality of the investigation stuff. Like let that happen on its own. But like the kids
Yeah.
going through this and figuring it out, that's where that movie really could have shined because you do have some interesting dynamics. Uh, Carter is a psychopath who should be committed somewhere because he has a lot of problems.
He
So
does.
many.
Yeah, he really needs to get his emotions in check. But I mean, I think that if they had just kind of handled it that way rather than making it bigger
Mhm.
than that, I think they could have again added more to the story because it was really
Mhm.
interesting trying to see him figure out the pattern and figure out that death was on its way. But like I don't know, a little more lore, a little more death, a little more kind of like here's why and some of the like proof that it's happened before. I think some of that could have been good.
Well, and even like you said, rounding out those characters a little bit more because they all are very sort of one note.
For
Even
sure.
what's his name, Sean William Scott. He's like the class loser of some sort. Carter's like, I am jock. I am here to play football or whatever. Like
Yeah.
a debt's not gonna catch me. And then you have
I'm never
like
gonna
I
die.
am best friend. I am girlfriend. Like that Terry, the character of Terry is literally I am girlfriend of Carter. That is like her whole character. So like being able to round those characters out a little bit more. I mean, it's a breezy movie. That's only about an hour and 30 minutes, 33 minutes or so. So it's a pretty quick watch. But yeah, I want to mention another character though. I want to mention Tony Todd, who shows up as the mortician, who seemingly knows knows the death scheme. He seemingly knows the plot of the movie.
Yeah. That's
And he
what
delivers in the most terrifying way.
I love when Tony Todd shows up out of nowhere just for fun because it's a horror movie.
Mhm,
He's always a pleasant surprise in a horror movie. I also enjoyed seeing him there. What about
mhm.
some of the other main characters though? Like, what did you guys feel like as far as deaths, as far as how they were presented? How do we feel about some of these teenagers?
Delightful. Devin Sawa is pretty great. I enjoy him in this.
Mhm,
I agree with you, Garrett, that I wish they spent more time with the kids versus the FBI agents. Just because I did enjoy a lot of the performances. Ali Larter is really fun to see in this
mhm,
in
mhm.
this movie. Even though I do wish all these characters had a little more depth to them. Outside of that, though, they get a little crazy to me. Sean William Scott, pre American Pie, I believe, barely.
That threw me for a
Um,
loop too.
Or maybe as American Pie. I don't
and I
remember
had
them
to
kind of
look it
coming out
up
right
because
back to
I'm
back.
always distracted by this kind of thing. 23-year-old Sean William Scott, looking not a day under 30, talking about I just took my driver's license test.
Yeah,
Killed
yeah,
me a little bit. I don't know if it's the skincare or what, but y'all looked old back then.
they did. They did not look
At
like
23, he
they
did
did not
not
look
look
teenagers.
23.
No.
He didn't look 23. He sure did
Some
look
did,
16.
some didn't. Like, I
Yeah.
thought Devin Sawa looked his age pretty close, but
Mhm,
then you had, like, Todd, the character Todd, who
mhm.
looked like he's been running a business for 20 years to me. But they're fun. I like them around. I like their deaths are kinda like they're not all great for the main characters, I feel like.
No, I mean, specifically, the
What
crazy thing is how over the top they go for Todd and Mrs. Luton, and even to a minor extent, Carter and Billy, right? Terry literally just steps in front of a bus. There was no chain of events. There was no like, oh, the bus driver had to go this way because somebody pulled out in front of him, or
well,
a
maybe there
flat
was.
tire caused something to happen. We get none of that. She just goes drop dead,
That
splat,
was so funny.
and I was like,
Man, I
it was
howled.
very sudden and funny,
Unexpected, I
and
howled.
it's and I feel like it's that it's kind of it and the very end of this movie are two very iconic little sequences because we would see a lot of near bus people hit by bus in movies. I feel like through the 2000s, and this is like especially in the scary movie franchise. But yeah, this was one of the few times you actually see somebody just blood splatter after getting smashed by a bus that was driving, frankly, way too fast in a commercial district.
What's crazy to me is I feel like if this were in any sense real,
Mhm.
the like again just showing the incompetency of law enforcement, Alex would have to be he would have to be arrested just
Sure.
for his
Yeah.
you're there every time.
Hmm.
We have to just to keep other people safe until we figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're just gonna let this kid
You're
run wild.
Yeah, you had some sort of knowledge about a plane explosion. Your best friend dies, and then you're present at at a third accidental death. Something's up, you know. Anyway.
I also so one of the early deaths is Todd in the shower. Well, he's not really in the shower. Um, he is hanging his clothes to dry in the shower. Is
Yeah,
that?
I guess their family hangs their
I was
clothes
trying to
dry in the
figure
Yeah.
that
shower.
out a little bit. I'm accepting that might be a normal thing
Hmm.
for
Maybe
that.
they don't have
I don't know.
access to a washer dryer. Who knows?
But then we
Yeah.
get this whole chain of events where like the water leaks and then the soap spills and then he slips and then it around his neck.
His neck. Oh man.
How did they consider that suicide?
Yeah. That was especially
Like
whenever he said there's stuff at like clawing at the neck and things like that. Like, no, no, but that's
mm,
crazy.
With the soap, well, I guess the soap kind of cleaned up itself, didn't it?
It did, and that was my
just
first like
That was
inkling of the
weird.
supernatural aspect of
Yeah,
it. I didn't fully get what was happening, like death was fully coming after them because it did clean
mm,
itself up, which I thought was strange. It should have,
it
you
was
know,
strange.
the accident aspect of it makes sense. I mean, like if he slipped or something, and all of that happened, that seems like it would make more sense. But yeah, when the water like reversed itself, I was kind of like, huh?
whoa.
That
Yeah,
was my favorite death because it was the hardest one for me to watch.
it is. It is. I think it is the hardest because he's so
It's
helpless. Like
slow and he's
everybody else.
helpless, and it's just
Yeah.
you can strangulation and drowning is just very difficult to think
Yeah,
about.
So you have one where it's very slow and very hard to watch because I kind of like when his eyes go bloodshot and stuff. It's just like you feel so bad for him in that
Yeah, this
moment because
was
he
me.
can't get help.
Yeah.
You have one that's very sudden. You have the Miss Luton death, which is very kind of convoluted because she like
That one's
drips vodka
comedic.
all the way. Yeah, she like drips vodka to the computer. The computer explodes and the fire and all that.
Yeah,
And
that's the
then
piece I forgot. The computer explodes and a
Yeah.
chunk of monitor glass hits like her jugular.
Yep.
yes,
What?
And then she yanks it out, and then
and
she's pulling it.
And
Yeah.
then the knife falls in her chest.
and then the knife falls in her chest, and then a chair falls and hits the knife again and drives it in deeper. And then you have one where, so I mean, I appreciate that each death kind of has its own style a little bit because then you have the death where you think Carter's going to die, he gets saved, and then you just see this piece of metal that's like waiting under the train, waiting, and it's like wobbling, and you're like, oh gosh, something bad's about to happen. And then Billy mid freak out just half head. uh it was, sudden, but also like you knew something bad was about to happen, but you didn't know exactly what. And I can tell you on TV they always just cut to their reaction. They never showed Billy's head
Yeah,
get cut
don't
off.
watch this on TV.
So this was the first time I saw the actual full-on decapitation sequence.
I really appreciate how they pepper in the like long convoluted Rube Goldberg deaths with the sudden, well, he's headless now.
Yes.
It
Yes,
keeps
it's
you
a
on your
good
toes
mix.
a little bit.
In the
Death comes at you
sequels,
in
they
every
become
single way.
Yep.
in the sequels they get more outlandish with the Rube Goldberg aspect of this, then chain of events cause this. And in this one they really don't do that to a high degree, with the exception of maybe that Miss Luton one. Everything is kind of like the only thing that really killed Todd was slipping on the water. Everything else was just already there, present, right? And so the slipping on the water and the spilling everything, that was all himself. But anyway, yeah, I think that they have a good variety in this one, and I think it's why it works to me maybe the best. I do remember people being very scared of Final Destination 2 as well, but I think this one might be the one that works the best of the series.
You got a favorite death, Garrett? Love that question.
I know, right? No, I think for me Terry's was just so sudden, and I like it. Just I wasn't expecting it, and so it was
Yeah.
very just. It made me laugh, to be honest with you, because it's one of those where I either laugh or I scream, and I was like, ah ha 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 ha. That's the way that it felt. So it was so unexpected. That one I enjoyed, and it doesn't always have to be Rube Goldbergy, and I think that's probably why
Right.
a lot of the sequels get out of hand. You look at Saws, you look at all of these other horror movies that go too far, is that they lean into the wrong things. They're
Yeah.
what makes this one good is I appreciate that there is sudden and there is a chain of events, because that, again, like you said earlier, David, it keeps me guessing. I don't know where it's going to come, but if everything is a chain of events and I've not seen all 7 of these and how they handle them, but I imagine that sometimes they're pretty obvious and sometimes they backtrack and they're like, oh, I never even saw it coming. But sometimes you can just get too into your own gimmick where it becomes a little more silly than it should be.
Well, the thing that comes up that I know of in at least the second one and the third one is this idea of death getting skipped, because as they introduce in this movie, or at least as Alex figures out, he saves Carter a second time, so death skips him for now. That becomes the big chain going forward, is people saving each other and then having to figure out, well, who's next? What's the order now? I love in this movie, Alex thinks he's next now, so he goes and he hides out in this cabin, and in full crazy mode, he has safety proofs
He's
the
booby
whole
trapped him.
place.
Yeah.
I really, or anti booby trapped him,
Yeah. However
and
you want to
he's.
look at that.
I really would have loved it if the movie just ended with him shouting in the cabin, "I've got you beat! You can't get me!" I would have loved it if it just went credits right there of just crazy man living in cabin trying to fight death. I love that he looks up and goes, "Tetanus, nice try," or whatever.
Yes,
Clever.
this nice
Yeah.
try was a great line.
Yeah. And then I love him realizing, wait a minute, I never switched seats. And then the the fire blowing out as if Death said, "Oh yeah, you didn't switch seats." Like Death realized.
Remembered. Yeah.
Death also was like, "Oh, I forgot that too. Shoot, I'm out of here." And him having to run to save the other person. Like, I love that Death isn't that smart in this movie. But also, I wanted to talk about the very ending,
Yes.
because I
Let's talk
think
about
this
the
is
very ending here.
yes, I
before we
think
move
that
on.
the 6 months later,
Yes.
after all these events, we get a little epilogue of them in Paris. What do you guys think of this?
Well, for one, I'm glad it was spoken because I also thought this. I can't believe they got on a plane again after just 6 months.
For sure.
Yeah.
Little surprised by that,
Yeah.
especially to go back to Paris, which they didn't get to go to. Um, so it was kind of like, I don't know what I felt like I needed from the epilogue, but I didn't really need it to go the way. I don't know that I needed it in Paris, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I
Mm-hmm.
like the last minute switch up and the final twist that death wasn't done with them yet. But also, it's kind of a lame final death. Like, it's just kind of lame to end on that after all the cool deaths. That's
Oh
my
yeah, just
reaction.
him getting hit by the sign
Yeah, and then of
on its
all
way
like,
down.
we're not even gonna see it. We saw all the other gruesome stuff.
Mm. It really is like, I mean, it's the definition of cliffhanger in a way because Death's not done with them, clearly setting up for potential sequel. I remember as a kid, really kind of, I remember as a kid being like, it having that what reaction of like, what? That's where you're going to end it? Like, it's very. I think that's the goal sometimes with those sort of like cut to black endings and letting your mind do the heavy lifting on how brutal that would be to get smashed by a bistro sign. It is very funny because if you survived this ordeal, I would be looking over my shoulder every day worried. I would definitely not be getting on any planes. And so it is kind of crazy that I wonder how long they went. They got to month 4 and they're like, I think that's done with us.
No.
Should we book a flight?
I would never ever overlook death. That is a stupid rookie move. And everyone should be a rookie at this. And yeah, you should immediately know, hey, maybe if I have pissed off death, he's not just gonna be like, hey, the kids win. I'll let him have it. That's not how death
Yeah,
rolls. He's
they
gonna come
bested
back
me.
with a vengeance.
I always really appreciated how how the sequel works is that basically the chain of events as set off by Alex Browning is that because they survived that plane crash and got off the plane, that created and had to die in new ways. That created this knock-on effect of there was a state trooper that responded to Billy Hitchcock's death at the train, right? And because he responded to that, he didn't die in a car crash later that night because he was taken off of his thing for this Billy thing that wouldn't have happened had Billy died on the plane. There's a woman who treats somebody at the hospital and she was supposed to be murdered by her somebody, what things like that, right? So like that's how they push this forward is this idea that like that one pivotal event created all of these cascading changes. So I think that's again a clever idea, but I don't know that the series lives up to the originality of its concept at all times. What do you guys think of that? This movie had 4 sequels between 2003 and 2011. You, Josh, you're muted.
I haven't seen any of them, so I can't comment.
Nope.
Mm.
Me neither.
No, I
But I'm not surprised that they would be underwhelming. That surprises me little.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's one of those things that, I think you mentioned it, Garrett. The movie the sequels focus too much on the deaths, the wrong things, and this movie is a good proof of concept. And like you said, a reboot might put more effort into rounding out the characters. We are getting another sequel in 2025 called Final Destination Bloodlines. Any interest in what a 2025 vision for this movie might bring?
Potentially.
Not.
That's all I know to say.
I don't think that they are going to go the right route. So no, they have to prove me. They have to prove me wrong. To be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love to be proven wrong, for the record.
Yeah, I can't. I don't see any real information about it, so we'll have to keep an eye on this one. It's just scheduled for 2025. So.
Yeah, it's something that's again been delayed by the pandemic and by the SAG-AFTRA strike. So I don't know when they initially wanted this movie to come out, but they got Tony Todd coming back.
Well, let's hit our final thoughts here, and wrap up our first installment of So Many Scares 2024. I'm happy with the pick. I'm glad. It's always nice when you pick a movie and then you didn't regret it in the end. I think that's always our goal, is to just not regret it.
You don't feel ashamed?
I don't feel ashamed that we watched Final Destination. Did it hold up from what I remembered? I don't know if that's the right way to talk about it, but I enjoyed it. I think I'm gonna give it 3 stars, which is a little generous, but I'm feeling generous.
Similarly, I think the movie ultimately achieves what it sets out to do, which normally is where I put a 3 stars. As if the movie executes on its premise successfully, I kind of lean on 3 stars. But it didn't necessarily elevate like you said, it is a little cheesy. It is a little hammy at times. Characters are kind of one note. So I think it was a good pick. I really enjoyed getting to rewatch this. This is a horror movie I can do. So I appreciate that. I'm also going to give it 3 stars.
Yeah, this one's really fun. It's good to watch with your friends, especially if you grew up in that time frame and you're more familiar with it. I feel like this is a good one to be like throw a Halloween party and say, "Hey, we're watching Final Destination. Who's coming?" And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, bring the popcorn, whatever." I think that would be fun. I don't think it's as scary as it should be. I don't
Mm.
necessarily think it's acted as well as it should be, but there's such a good idea there, and they do bring a good level of entertainment. And I think this movie is okay. And on my scale, that is 2.5.
Oh,
That's
okay.
valid, totally valid.
Okay.
I think these are good. 2 threes and a 2.5.
Mm.
All right, now moment of truth. We got to find out what Letterbox thinks.
Mm.
So
Yes,
we
yes.
will be dropping some guesses before we reveal that. But let's go through some of the most popular reviews of Final Destination first and see kind of what people are saying here. First review is 4 stars from Dixie. Clear cheats death a second time, and suddenly she's not goth anymore. I hate it here. Good observation.
Yeah, because she dyes her hair blonde and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly reshoot. Clearly a reshoot.
3.5 stars, or as I like to call it, first of 5 destinations. 4 stars. Oh, to be a 2000s horror movie character, unapologetically dumb, driving to Nine Inch Nails songs, rocking low-rise jeans, bangs, lip gloss, always applied somehow.
Yeah.
And then finally, this did not have a rating, just a heart. Final Destination is my favorite movie because the boys go poop together. I love positive depictions of male friendship. Yes, we stand boys who are regular.
It's very
Glad I wasn't the
positive.
only one to notice that. It was
Yeah.
odd.
You're not the only one to point that out.
Poop is
Oh, man. Okay. Well, Garrett, you are still trailing, but only by 1 to Josh. So, first rights you have.
I think that we're gonna be right around the 3.5 level, but I'm gonna go in between. I think it's gonna be a 3.3.
Okay. I'm gonna undercut that a little bit and think that maybe how far though? I think you know what? I'm gonna pick a 3. I'm gonna pick an even 3, like my actual
Even
rating.
3. I'm gonna. Gosh, I feel bad about this.
5 stars.
No, I'm gonna skew even lower. I'm gonna say 2.7.
2.7. Okay,
I feel like most people don't like this movie.
we got a wide range here. I love it when that happens. We got a 3.3, my 3.0, and David's 2.7. Let's see here. Okay, I have the results. We do not have a direct hit today.
Mhm.
And our winner is off by 1.1. And it's Garrett. This movie's a 3.2.
Wow. Good for this movie.
I'm
Good for
honestly
this movie.
surprised because I
am
too,
too.
David, thought it was a 2.7. I just thought Letterboxd are probably going to be a little more friendly than I would be.
I think they have good good connection with this movie, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna. Before you guys put your guesses in, 2.9 was where I was sitting, and Josh had 3, and I was like, well, I'll go a little lower just in case. But yeah, okay, 3.2. I'm pleased to see that because I know that this. I looked at some of the other sites. This is kind of how I gauge my guesses sometimes. Is on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe it's like a 37%. And so I was like, man, the people at the time didn't like it, but Letterboxd came out way after that, so people probably remember this movie somewhat fondly. But it's also kind of cheesy, so I could see people rating it lower. 3.2 is pretty good, for this. I bet this is the highest of the series.
I think 3.2 is pretty good for Final Destination. All right. Well,
What ties you and Josh up?
Yes, we're tied again. The race is getting closer and closer. We're getting closer and closer to the end as well as the year wraps up. So we'll keep playing that and let you guys know how it goes. That's all for this episode, our very first of So Many Scares 2024. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or in your favorite podcasting app to keep up with new episodes and reviews. We've got our weekly So Many Updates episode where we talk about new trailers, news stories, what we've been watching, other fun movie-related stuff. You can also follow us on Instagram. That's where we're most active, at So Many Sequels Pod. Let us know what you think of the show there. Let us know if you watch Final Destination or what else we should consider watching for So Many Scares.
Send us your picks
Finally,
now.
yes, send us your picks now. We'll put out a call this week for that. So yeah, go check out Instagram. And then finally, head to SoManySequels.com. You can get links to our other social platforms as well as a catalog of all of our past episodes there. So we will see you all next time.